And if you're not a person of color, if you did not grow up in a small town, you're not going to relate to this video. Like, it's a very, not a super niche experience, but this is not an experience that happens to everyone. This is just our experience. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rotting in Bed podcast. I'm your host, Asia Simone, and here's my cat, Hazel. Today, I wanted to get on here and talk about what it was like growing up in a small, conservative town in the South. Honestly, my experience was not that great, so I would say this video is probably going to be rather negative. So if you're not looking for the negative aspects of growing up in a small town in the South, then just go ahead and click out. But if you think you can relate to what it's like going through this experience, especially as a person of color, especially as a Black queer woman, then continue watching. So I guess first thing to start off with is there's a lot of racism in small towns, and it's just because people aren't exposed to many cultures. Usually the predominant culture is white. My small town was typical like that, where it was mostly filled with white people. Of course, had some Black people, and then there were so few Asian people and so few Hispanic people that sometimes you would know like the names and like the families of the few, like people knew the names of the few Asian families that lived in the town because there were so few of them. There was also not a lot of religious diversity. Pretty much everyone was a Christian. And within Christianity, there was Catholics, Baptists, Protestants, what's the other one? Pentecostals. There was a variety within the Christians, but there wasn't a lot of Jewish people and there wasn't a lot of Muslim people either. Being exposed to very little things naturally just makes you kind of close-minded because you have no reason to be open and realize there's more to life than the experience you're having. So I would say growing up, I experienced a lot of people projecting their ignorance onto me in the form of racism or in the form of sexism. I got things from comments about my hair as a child to comments about my skin tone as a child, people making jokes about how dark I am or what my hair feels like, or even jokes about slavery and picking cotton that were just very inappropriate. And I experienced this from elementary school as young as 6 years old all the way through high school. And I would say it was pretty traumatizing when you're a young Black person and you have to go through this experience, especially if you're actually self-aware and intelligent. So like, I wasn't someone who was just like head empty, no thoughts, like how a lot of people in my small town were. I actually had thoughts and I questioned why about things. And so whenever people would discriminate against me or say these mean, ugly things, I was very confused as to why am I being treated this way. I just never expected it, I guess. I just thought I was like any other person. But over time, I came to realize that I was very different and I did not fit in. And it's weird because I didn't fit in because I was an intelligent Black person. Specifically, like people weren't used to seeing that. And to the point where they called me an Oreo, which means you're white on the inside, Black on the outside. And that's their way of saying that you don't belong, you don't fit in, you're not what we expect out of a Black person. And I've been told I'm articulate for a Black person. Just all these things that are like really double-handed, double-edged, what's the saying where it's like a two-sided comment or a double-edged sword for a comment, for a compliment. If you're watching this video right now and you are a young person in a small town, I'm so sorry you're going through that because it does mess up your self-esteem and your self-image. It makes you want to think poorly of your own people, and you have to resist and fight that and know that these people who are being racist towards you are not coming at it from an educated point of view or a world point of view, and they really don't know that much about themselves or other people at all, and they shouldn't be speaking on certain topics at all. But one thing is, a lot of times people in small towns, they think they know everything. It's really not a great mentality to have. I think when you come from a bigger area where there's more diversity, you're forced to learn about the world and realize it's not all about you and your experience is not the only experience on this earth. And I think that's very crucial and important. Now, another thing is I feel like small town people are they feel a lot of pressure to conform to societal norms, even more so than if there was a bigger city that they were living in, even more so than people who live in bigger cities. Because when you're in bigger cities, once again, more variety of lifestyles. So you see different things, and are aware that people exist who've made different choices from you. But in a small town, everyone knows everyone's business, and you want to maybe hold up a reputation and you want to feel better than people. And honestly, in a small town, you don't have a lot going for you because there's just not much to do. There's not much industry in small towns. There's not much entertainment in small towns. And so you hold on to little things like someone's success in school, and if they got straight A's on the report card, and if they were better in band, or if they were the better swimmer. You pay attention to a lot of small town folks pay attention to the small things that don't really matter in life relating to their kids to feel better than some other people's kids, or like to feel like their family is better. One of the ways in which I feel like they try to feel better than other people is how much they can conform to societal norms. And so like having a family with 2 kids and a dog and a fence, not literally a fence, but you know what I'm saying, the American dream of a white picket fence, having a non-queer family, having a very traditional homogenous race family, just all these things that in the end, this works, the lifestyle works for some people and it's natural to some people, but it's not actually natural to everyone, but everyone's trying to conform to it. So I feel like it creates a sort of bitterness on the inside. I've seen, like, at least from my peers in the hometown where they're trying so hard to be something they're not, they create a bitterness and an ugliness inside that they then project onto other people. And it's unfortunate. It's a downside of living here. And I know one of those projections is it can come out very sexist and very heterosexual, where there's constant expectations from women that there aren't from men. You're expected, and honestly, it's well, expectations for both genders that then aren't expected of the other gender for no particular reason. In my opinion, a lot of gender stereotypes and roles are very arbitrary. And it's not even really my opinion. If you historically look up a lot of gendered things, it was made up by somebody to make money, like shaving legs as a woman or pink is a color for girls. It was all made up to make money. You just have to do your research and you'll find out these things. And I would say it's been very hard being queer because I didn't get any representation of queer people and queer people of color growing up. And so, like, I don't know what it's like to see 2 girls love each other openly. All I know what it's like to see closeted girls and girls who are in denial and girls who are very suspicious, but in the end decide to be straight and decide to get married and have a kid, even though all throughout high school or your life spent with them, they always seem suspicious. There's just no pride. I feel like I also had a hard time finding pride in my ethnic background for the longest time. Being in a small town with a predominantly white culture makes you feel like being black is only one image. And I got this not just from specifically white people, but everyone in the small town of all backgrounds. We all saw each other as stereotypes, which really is sad because it reduces people down to so little. Like, our cultures are so flourishing and have so much to offer. And when you're from a small town, all you get is this tiny little snippet of it, and it's really a distorted version. And so I'm one of those people who, in order to cope with basically the trauma of growing up with that and how it made me feel and how isolated I felt and just how like alone and like I didn't have like real friends, I decided to go off to a college far away. I went to Central Florida. I went to Orlando for college, and I majored in anthropology literally as a coping mechanism for the fact that I felt traumatized by growing up with such lack of diversity and such a lack of inclusion and equality amongst the people in my hometown. I think it's the same thing as how a lot of people will become psychology majors because they have trauma. And so really they're trying to psychoanalyze themselves more so than make it an actual career. I definitely was doing that. And looking back at it, I have no regrets, but I just needed something. I needed so much an outlet to actually be myself. And I think the saddest part about growing up in a small town is at the end of the day, everyone deserves and has the right to be themselves. And for some reason in the small town, people just don't want you to. And I will just never understand that. I'm a very live your life how you feel. Don't let anything hold you back. But I feel like these small towns, they want to rely on tradition. They want to rely on conservatism. And I just think fundamentally, tradition and conservativeness is never going to be the truth. It is just not the truth of the human experience. People are not a monolith. And so I feel like it just doesn't make sense when you try to force people into a box when there's no box that can fit it, whether it's your gender or it's your racial identity or whatever it is. Girls and boys don't have to act a certain way. They can wear whatever they want. They can grow their hair out, cut it short, have piercings, have tattoos, smoke, cuss, not wear dresses. Girls can wear suits. Boys should be able to wear dresses because we literally are deciding that one thing means female and one thing means male. It does not inherently mean that on its own. Like heeled shoes, men used to wear heeled shoes. I can't remember what time period it was. There was a time period where men wore heeled shoes, men wore wigs. And that's why when you study anthropology, you come to see these things as very cultural and based off of the time and place in history, and it's not permanent. When you're from a small town, a lot of things seem permanent. The way you live life, in the stereotypes you see, in the media projections you see, you think that that's it and that's the way it's always been. Do some research, go online, and you find out that there's much more. So fundamentally, I just don't understand people who try so hard to live their life by conservative, small-minded values. Why not let everybody be themselves? I don't know. Maybe I'm too liberal. Maybe I'm too progressive. Um, but I don't understand fundamentally why someone would be so small-minded, conservative, and choose to live in a small town. Well, not choose to live in a small town because there's perks. There's perks to living into a small town. It's quieter. The traffic is better. The nature can be nicer sometimes too. So I like certain things about living in a small town, but the people I do not like at all. And I wish I could have had a better experience with that, but that's just how it is. But this video is not going to resonate for everybody because one, you might be a conservative person, you might have grown up with traditional values, and you may think that's how you're supposed to live life. So obviously, this video will conflict with what you think is correct, and that's your right. But then also, you may not be a person of color, but this is a real experience that we do have. And I just wanted to speak on it because I grew up feeling so alone in it. And I want other people to know that it does get better with time because you gain your own self autonomy. You can get out of your house, you can earn money, and then you can move out of the small town and live wherever you want. And you can travel the world. And especially once you start traveling the world with an open mind, because I know plenty of people who travel the world but with a closed mind. But if you travel the world with an open mind and actually go to places that feel very uncomfortable to you and are actually very opposite from your normal lifestyle and that aren't just tourist traps with all the westernized version of things, you will actually see how big and vast this world is and how when you're trying to stick to tradition and conservativeness, you aren't really living life. And so I guess this video partly is for people like me, but also I feel sad for people who are conservative and traditional. I feel sad for you guys because you're not living. You're not living your true authentic self. You're trying to adhere to rules that society made up. And sometimes you tell yourselves, I think sometimes conservatives tell themselves these rules are coming from the Bible or other religious texts, but ultimately it's coming from people because the way we're interpreting those rules is based off the society we live in right now. Because I promise you, in a different time, they were interpreted differently. Talking about these things won't necessarily persuade anyone to stop being conservative or stop being traditional, but I wish I could. I wish I could just get people to understand that people aren't progressive just because it's the new thing to do. It's because being progressive is just allowing people to live and breathe how they naturally would instead of trying to force things and say, that's unnatural, that shouldn't be that way. If something is so unnatural, then why does it keep coming up again as a human trait? Because it's natural. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I might get like some hate comments and some pissed off people, and I already know I'm going to be called ignorant, and I'm mentally prepared for that. But thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you feel less alone. Bye.